It's the most incredible journey any of us will ever take, and yet not a single one of us can actually remember it. I'm talking about the first 40 weeks of our existence, that amazing transformation from just a single cell into a complex, sensing, and even learning human being, all before we ever take our first breath.
So, let's just dive right into that, because that really is the big question we're exploring today. How does this miraculous construction project actually work? What's the blueprint? What are the materials? And what happens along the way?
Okay, so here's the game plan. We'll start with the two big forces that guide all development. Then we'll walk through the timeline from conception to birth. We're going to take a special look at how our brain gets wired, what it's actually like inside the womb, what can go wrong, and finally, we'll meet the remarkably capable newborn.
All right, first things first, the blueprint. All human development is guided by this constant, dynamic dance between our genetic code and our environment. This isn't a battle, it's a partnership, right from the get-go.
For ages, people have argued about nature versus nurture. But what's so cool is that modern science shows us that's a really outdated way to think about it. You've got nature, which is our biological inheritance, right? It's all coded in our genes. And then you've got nurture, which is pretty much all the input from the environment. Everything from the food a mother eats to the sounds a fetus hears.
Right, so here's the takeaway, and it's a big one. They aren't separate forces fighting for control. They're actually knitted together in what you could call a seamless dialogue. The environment can literally influence which genes get turned on or off, and our genes can shape how we interact with our environment. It's this intimate, continuous conversation.
So let's see how this partnership actually builds our physical form. The 40-week prenatal journey is a period of growth so fast, it's unlike anything that'll happen for the rest of our lives after birth. And we usually break it down into three main phases.
In this is where it all begins. A single cell, called a zygote. This one tiny cell, smaller than a grain of salt, holds the complete genetic blueprint, all the instructions needed to build an entire human being. It's absolutely mind-boggling when you think about it.
So you can think of this whole journey in like 3 acts. First up is the germinal period, the first 2 weeks. It's just a frantic time of cell division and then implantation. Then comes the really crucial embryonic period, from week 3 to 8. This is when all the major organs get formed, the heart, the eyes, the limbs, the brain. And finally, you have the fetal period, from week 9 all the way to birth, which is all about growth and maturation, basically fine-tuning all the systems that are already there.
But what's just wild is the speed and the order of all this. I mean, look what's first on the list, the central nervous system. A basic brain and spinal cord are some of the very first things to develop, starting in just the 3rd week. Before the heart is even fully up and running, the foundation for our thoughts and senses is already being laid down.
Okay, and that brings us to maybe the most mind-blowing construction project of them all, the prenatal development of the human brain. The complexity and the sheer speed of this process are they're almost beyond comprehension.
Seriously, try to get your head around this number. 250,000 new brain cells every single minute. I mean, wow. This isn't just random growth. This explosive production is creating the raw biological hardware for a lifetime of thinking, feeling, and learning.
So how does this happen? Well, it's basically a 3-step dance. First, you have neurogenesis, that explosive creation of brain cells. Second is migration. These new cells travel to their correct locations, kind of like pioneers finding their permanent home. And finally, and this part is just brilliant, the brain overproduces connections and then prunes away the ones that aren't used. This makes the whole system way more efficient and lets it get shaped by experience. It's genius.
And boom, here's what all that activity gets you. You can see the brain's physical transformation from just a simple, smooth tube into that incredibly complex, folded structure we all recognize. This is what allows for consciousness itself to emerge. So, okay, we've got this body and this brain being built at lightning speed, but what's it actually like for the fetus? Is it just a quiet, passive existence? Not even close. The womb is a rich sensory world, and the fetus is a very active participant.
The senses actually come online in a really cool order. Touch is first, as early as 8 weeks. By the middle of the pregnancy, the fetus is living in a world of flavor. It can taste and smell strong flavors from mom's diet, like garlic, that make their way into the amniotic fluid. And by 20 weeks, it can hear. And not just hear, but react to sounds, and even remember them. Studies show newborns prefer the sound of their own mother's voice over a stranger's, a preference they learned in the womb.
So what's a fetus up to all day? Well, mostly sleeping, a lot. By 28 weeks, sleep cycles include REM, or rapid eye movement sleep, and this isn't just rest. At birth, REM sleep makes up about half of all sleep time, and scientists think it's absolutely vital for organizing the developing brain, especially the sensory systems, and for laying down our very first memories.
You know, this whole process is incredibly robust, but it's also delicate. It's vulnerable. There are risks along the way that can disrupt that beautiful genetic and environmental blueprint.
And a really important word to know here is teratogen. It's kind of a catch-all term for any environmental agent, could be a drug, a virus, a pollutant, that can get to the embryo or fetus and cause harm. And here's something that's just critical to understand. When this exposure happens matters a lot. That embryonic period, when all the major organs are first being built, that's the time of maximum vulnerability for big structural damage. Later, during the fetal period, the risk shifts more towards functional problems. But as you can see, the brain and central nervous system stay sensitive to harm right up until the very end.
And these risks, they can come from all over the place. Something as seemingly simple as malnutrition, like not getting enough folic acid, can have devastating effects. Maternal choices, even with legal things like alcohol, can severely impact brain development. Viruses can cross the placenta and cause all sorts of problems. And sometimes the errors aren't from the environment at all, but are genetic, just mistakes in that super complex process of cell division.
All right, so after about 40 weeks, that amazing journey inside the womb wraps up, and a completely new one kicks off. Let's meet the star of the show, the newborn, also known as the neonate.
You know, for the longest time, people thought newborns were just these helpless, blank slates. Turns out, that's totally wrong. They arrive pre-equipped with a bunch of useful reflexes, like the rooting reflex to find food, and their senses are already tuned in. They recognize their mother's voice and even prefer her smell, carrying those memories from the womb. They cycle through different states, from deep sleep to quiet alertness. And get this, they sleep 16 to 18 hours a day, and half of that is in that crucial, brain-organizing REM sleep we talked about. The work of development just keeps going at a furious pace.
Which brings us to this final thought. We've seen that the fetus can hear, taste, and even form memories. We know that basic differences in temperament can be seen even in how active the fetus is. So it raises this pretty deep question. How much of your essential self, your personality, your tendencies, was already taking shape in that watery world long before you ever entered this?
So there you have it. The journey from a single cell is the universal story for every single one of us. It's really a testament to the elegant and complex dialogue between nature and nurture that creates a human life. I hope you enjoyed this little peek into our very first journey. Thanks for watching.